Hello, welcome to the AUBG Office Hours podcast. My name is Lubomir Yanchev. I am a sophomore student here studying business administration and economics, and I will be joining the team for this season of the podcast. Today I have with me a professor who I'm very happy to interview, who is part of the of the Bulgarian Expert Economic Council, and who I hope will tell us more about economics today. Please welcome to the show, Professor Nilsen. How are you feeling?
Goradolu.
Got it. So, when I came here, I didn't intend to study economics. I remember that for the business major, we have to study, principles of microeconomics and principles of macroeconomics. And I remember I kind of got into it after taking the micro course. But it was when I took the principles of macro course with you, I remember I kind of started to get a sense of, what the economy was as a whole and what the economics taught as a field. And so I want to kind of kick this conversation off by asking you if you can kind of relate what economics is about at its core and the differences between what we deem macroeconomy and microeconomics.
Sure. Well, microeconomics is looking at individuals, either firms or individual persons, and the incentives of these people to act the way they do, and how certain impulses can affect them, the prices of alternative goods and things like this. Whereas macroeconomics looks at an economy of a whole nation and tries to understand the total output of that country. Where does it come from? What are the effects of it? What is it trying to do? Where is it going? How does it grow? How is it interrupted by these financial business cycles? And also, the underlying people don't understand that there's a financial system that underlies a national economy, and it's really important, but nobody worries about it until something goes wrong. It's like plumbing, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing goes wrong until the toilet starts to overflow, and then you start to worry about it. And it's just the same thing with the financial system.
Understandable. From what you explained, it sounds like the macroeconomics, the economy as a whole, like the bird's eye view, as we say in class. It's like there's a lot of things that are happening at the same time that are intertwined in very sophisticated ways. And so in class, the way we kind of look at these things is through models. But you also mentioned incentives. And my question is, how do we, as we kind of develop these models, or economists develop these models to predict, in a sense, what will happen in the future, how do we kind of get a sense of what is going to happen based on what has already happened, or how does one factor cause another event to occur?
Well, you're right. It's a very complicated, an economy is a very complicated mechanism, and there are so many different possible influences on it that it's hard to keep track of it. I mean, you look at a country's, it's growing, but then something like a war can happen, and nobody has predicted a war to happen, but there it is. And so the macroeconomists who have predicted growth, they're wrong. Mm-hmm. But it's not their fault because something unforeseen has happened, and it happens all the time. So really, I think what a macroeconomist should do, or any economist, is to have an expectation of where the economy is going, but then to be able to say, well, if something else happens, how do we, avoid the worst possible cases of when that happens? So I think I went a little bit astray from the meaning of your question, but that came to my mind.
Okay. Well, it is unpredictable. Truly it is. Yet we have like some set of, we call them laws. So the main ones being supply and demand. Can you kind of elaborate on what, governs the economy or the markets in general? So what is the fundamental driving force that incentivizes people to go and consume and to save and that kind of stuff?
Well, I think in microeconomics you learn that people's wants are unlimited. People want everything. I mean, if you have a BMW, you have a desire to have a better car, a Porsche or a Maserati or something like this. So no matter what you have, you always want to do better. So it's a driving force in human behavior. You want more. However, as we learn in Principles of Micro, there are resources that are limited, and so of course that brings into the equation that you have to talk about people making choices. People cannot have all that they want. They have to say, hey, I want to take this, but then that's going to cost me something else because I have to give up the other thing. So that's really a driving force in human behavior. Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. It does sound to be that way, and I think it's another thing is that we live in really interesting times to kind of observe these phenomena. Would you agree that there's what's happening, especially the COVID pandemic, really kind of pushed the interest, I think, in that field, but how would you describe that world events shaking up local economies? So the world is interconnected nowadays very much, with globalization, with advances in technology. So would you say that it's what's the emphasis put on price changes, inflation, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the world is a very interesting place. The COVID pandemic was, once, what was it? Back in World War I was the last time there was a pandemic, and the government thought they had learned something in the intervening time, but politics intervened. You had it became a battle. Whether you should get vaccinated or not, which is absolutely crazy. But that's political. There were politicians who were espousing these ideas, and so every time we think we learn something, there's always something else that kind of intervenes and makes the world a little bit different, and we have to keep on being able to react in a sensible manner. And so politics gets involved, and then everything is out the window. Rational economic thought doesn't hold sway when you have politicians who are giving crazy ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't think I answered your question, but
well, it's an interesting answer. It makes me think of when you said we kind of learned from back in the day. So economics has evolved from what I understand from what you're telling me. And would you say that when you were getting your when you were getting your graduate degree and your Ph.D., do you think that it has the field has changed significantly in a significant manner? And compared to how it is now?
I think it has changed. There's been an evolution. Of course, back in 1994 is when I got my degree, and there was no such thing as, all the data that we have now was just a dream. We were, panel data, so cross-section and time series data was something new at the time. And now with all these sensors spitting out data with the cheap IT networks, it's really easy to get data, and there's so much data in the world that econometrics is becoming so much more important in learning about the world. So I would think I think that was the main issue. There have been new techniques in economic theory as well. But I think big data has been the main consequence.
Okay, but what about people's attitudes? Do you think in today we're more aware of the economic background that is underlining major world events, or do you think like it's people are oblivious, as you said earlier, until something happens, it's like no one really gives it any thought. But do you think that has changed over time, or is it still the same as it was?
I think that is the same. I mean, people have their own preferences, and they understand what their own preferences are, and that leads them to ignore certain things if they're not imposing a problem, or if they're not constrained in their behavior by that situation. So I think people are still people.
They will be.
Another thing, the financial markets, another technological advances, that the information gets so quickly incorporated into financial markets that the prices react immediately. Whereas there was a video that the Challenger disaster back in the 80s, I guess it was, the spacecraft that exploded on trying to take off, and it exploded, and there was a study done that showed that there were a couple of firms that were providing these parts, and the one that was responsible for the O-rings, their stock was more heavily affected, but it took a couple of days for their stock to be affected, whereas in today's world the stock would be affected immediately, because the information is so much more quickly distributed by the internet.
So do you think that kind of pushed, in general, like the advances in technology and the transfer of information, do you think that has pushed especially entrepreneurs to be more quick on their feet and to kind of accelerate decision making as a whole throughout the business sector?
Well, I think they would have to be more quick. I would say so, yes. That's a one-word answer. Sorry.
Well, could you elaborate on it, or?
Could I elaborate? Well, I, as you know, I'm an academic. I am not a risk taker in the sense of putting my savings into a project. I think that takes a lot of willingness to fail. And of course, if you've got some kind of, a stake in a project, you're going to be looking out to make sure that that's successful. So whatever the economic environment is, you have to make sure that you react. It's like buying a financial stock, right? I mean, you're looking for a share that is suited for the future, that is going to do well in the future. Something like Apple, for example, right? Apple looks like it's got a big hold on good technology and beautiful products. So you want to invest in that kind of company that has a future ahead of it. But then you have to watch out for certain things that might constrain that ability to make profits in the future. And of course, you have to move fast. So an entrepreneur with his own project would have to do the same.
So it has become
you have to react more
faster,
quickly.
Due to these changes. Okay, so you mentioned that you were like was it your bachelor's that you get in management information systems? So you originally kind of headed towards informatics or information systems, but then you kind of switched over to economics. What's kind of the story behind that?
Well, I did my bachelor's part-time. I was working during the day for New York Telephone Company. I was a technician. I did troubleshooting, and I analyzed equipment failures. And I wanted to get ahead. I wanted to move forward in the firm. and I was working with computer-operated equipment, and I thought that would be a way that I could advance in the firm. So, and I thought it was the future. This, by the way, was pre-Windows. Okay.
Okay.
So I did a lot of assembly language and database management systems. I did all kinds of studies in these topics. But then I wanted to have something that was more involved with people, with the society as a whole. What was really important in a society is the economic interrelationships, and that is why that was the main reason why I said, hey, this economics is something that I would like to learn more about.
Okay, and you here you teach the macroeconomic side of it, but was that what you were originally attracted to, or did you have some other? Did you prefer some other side of the whole field?
Well, I was influenced by a professor. I was actually going for a master's in business administration at NYU, and I had this professor teaching macroeconomics. His name is Lawrence Ball, and he's now teaching, I think, in Johns Hopkins University. He was at Princeton. He was at Princeton for a while, but at any rate, his style, he was kind of light and jokey and still very rigorous, and I really liked that. So that was the main influence for my going into macroeconomics.
Okay, and from then on out, after you got the Ph.D., did you just jump straight into the academic career to teaching, or did you do some private sector work before that?
Yeah, I wanted, PhDs at the time were mainly going into academics, and I wanted to move to Europe. I looked in the States, but I really wanted to move to Europe, and so my first job was as a lecturer or a professor in Prague at the place called Serge, that was, I had a 1-year contract that could be renewed to 2, and so I stayed there 2 years. A beautiful place to live, beautiful city, and then I moved after the contract expired. They wanted to keep me, but put me on a Czech salary, and I said, So I said, okay, so I looked for another job, and I found one in Copenhagen at Copenhagen Business School, which is a pretty decent school, and I stayed there, and then I saw a job opportunity in Switzerland at a foundation run by the Swiss National Bank. It's called Studienzentrum Gerzensee. My wife was German, so I had been learning German from early days. So I thought that was a great fit, and so and it was a wonderful experience there. The study center invited central banks, people from central banks around the world, to come for courses in monetary policy, and I was teaching central bankers about central banking, basically, which is a little bit too much, but at any rate, I gave them an economic viewpoint for monetary policy. And of course, there were other people coming. Very famous professors came there. Mishkin came there. Robert King, who you may not have heard of, but he's a famous macroeconomist. And Krugman was there as well. I met Krugman there. And Larry Ball came once, finally. So that was a very good experience. And then I left because of a dispute with the management.
And that's when you came to Bulgaria?
That's when I came to Bulgaria, yes. That was almost 17 years ago now.
Wow. Okay. So when you came here and when you came into the university as well, did you teach like, the courses that you gave, were they different from what they are now? And how would you compare like the changes from back when you came here to what it is now?
Well, I don't think there have been that many changes, at least in the principles, and in the principles courses there have probably been very few changes. I don't teach intermediate macro anymore. Professor Elgin is doing that. Money and banking, there have been some changes, especially after 2008. Mishkin changed his book quite a bit after 2008.
Yeah.
And so other than that, the financial crisis course came about because I was on sabbatical a couple, I guess 10 years ago now. And I visited Professor Kim, who you may know. He's in Seoul, Korea. And so I went there, and I was teaching one course, and it was a new course, and it was a course in financial crises, and that's where I made up the first time. So the first iteration of the course was suffered by Koreans and Chinese visiting students.
Wow. Okay. Pretty interesting stuff. So it was really. So you would say that kind of, the major, because it is a reflection of what is happening around the world, it is kind of, in a way, evolved through time with some of the major things that have been happening. Because I know Professor Elgin also taught a course about the COVID pandemic. That was another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So if, we put academics aside, what do you like to do kind of in your free time here when you're not teaching?
Well, I generally every Saturday I get up before dawn, and I go out and I go to my. I try to explore the southwest of Bulgaria, and sometimes I even go to places even in the Rhodope, but that's a little bit further drive, so I don't do that quite so often. I have one day off a weekend. That's what I do in the morning. And then I come home and I take a nap, and then my partner and I do something else, take a walk or something like that. So it's a kind of not an expansive life, but I think I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. You do photography too?
Sorry?
You do photography too?
I do photography. I thought
maybe I didn't hear you. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I do photography. I have a Nikon Z7, and I have a couple of different lenses. So I look for nice shots when I explore the area. So that's what I look for. Drama. I look for weather. Drama. I look for beautiful perspectives, and I find that a lot here. The mountains, the Rilla and the Pirin, are very
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. I don't like high altitudes because it's above the tree line, and there's not many trees,
Mm-hmm.
And that makes. Also, the villages are interesting. So I really like low altitudes. Foothills are okay because there are trees, there are villages, but if you go up to the 7 lakes of Rilla, there are no trees. It's kind of there's a couple of lakes, of course, but that's kind of a tourist attraction, and it's not really nature. I'm looking for beautiful nature. That's what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. What are some villages that kind of you like the most?
Well, I found Dokadachevo. That's a very small village. It used to be larger. Now it has shrunk because people have left. People have moved to cities or abroad. But it's quite a beautiful. It's above Samitli,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 1,000 meters above sea level. And it's quite dramatic. You can see Pirin from there. And when the sun comes up over Pirin, and sometimes there's fog, it's quite beautiful there. And it was quite challenging to find, as you could imagine, because when I first went up there, the road led to a town dump for Samitli. And I said, well, my God, this is terrible. But the road continued, so I kept on going. And now, by the way, the dump is gone. Samitli has covered it over with dirt, so it's not so bad to get there anymore. But it's still a serpentine road. You have to make, and it's a one-lane road, so it's kind of dramatic drive. But it's really worthwhile to go there. Also, I go often to a village called Logadash, which is near the border with North Macedonia. And it's got a lake, and it's got some beautiful scenery, things that I think are beautiful. The only problem is if I forget to put my phone on no roaming, the authorities in Macedonia always charge me for the roaming.
I wonder, you've traveled around these are small places that are not, they're not urbanized in any kind. Have you had some encounters with the locals that were
yes
mentioned worthy?
So I have two main problems. Hunters are there all the time, but I usually come before the hunters, right? So the hunters usually come around dawn. And I get scared, because they might shoot.
Yeah.
So sometimes I sing as I walk. But then there are the dogs, and the dogs are also a challenge. And my tripod serves a second purpose. Okay.
Okay.
The dogs respect tripods. And actually, I found also that lights if it's very dark, I bring a couple of pretty powerful flashlights, and the dogs dislike the bright lights, so they keep away when I shine on their faces. But so people, I practice sometimes my rudimentary Bulgarian, which is, of course, very limited. And I think I'm saying something that they can understand, but probably they can't. So it's interesting conversations.
They give word looks. I think it would be really interesting to kind of test some of the rudimentary Bulgarian skills. So I have prepared 10 words. And I would love to see if you can answer those and translate them into Bulgarian. Okay?
Gluposti.
Okay. How would you say money in Bulgarian?
Pari.
How would you say bank in Bulgarian?
Trezor?
Not quite.
Is it like the...
It's very similar to the English words.
Is it like the Greek?
I don't know what the Greek is.
Trapeza.
No, it's not trapeza. Bank.
Bank. Oh, I missed that one.
Banka. Banka. Almost. Okay. The next one is economy.
Economy.
Not quite. Okay. I think you've said this in class. You will know this one. Bank account.
Smetka.
Yeah.
And the other one. The demand deposit is...
Raspoštat.
What is the demand deposit? Razplaštetelna smetka.
Yeah. Wonderful. Government.
Suet? No.
Not quite. Okay. Sunset.
Zora?
That's sunrise. We'll give half points to that one. Photo.
Objective I can give you.
I'll take objective. Well, photography. What does that? How?
No.
No. Okay. Village.
Selo.
Wonderful. And the last one is town.
Grat.
Grad. Wonderful.
Where is that city?
Well, we don't have a clear distinction. City is like above 1 million. I think that's how it was. We say Grad in either case.
Oh, so Rilla is Selo.
Do you mean the mountain or
Where the people live? Because I had a picture there and I called it a Selo, and somebody said, no, we're a Grad.
Yes? Okay, I think it's a Grad. Okay.
But it's not a million.
It's not, I don't think it is.
No,
I think
like
we only have 1 million. That's Sofia.
50,000.
Yeah, Sofia is the only one. So overall, what would you say about like Bulgarian culture from what you have seen in these past 17 years? How would you describe it?
Culture.
Yeah.
There's tradition here. There's tradition. There's food. There's language. I think it's got a strong culture, and the language is very difficult to learn for an American. There's high culture and there's low culture, right? In the sense that what is art, I would say, is high culture. I'm not too familiar with the high culture of Bulgaria, but the everyday culture is strong.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today, and I really enjoyed having you on the show. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, thank you. I think I've said too much already.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thanks.